The first time my mother called me a liar, I was 17. I had just thrown up from the pain for the third time that morning, and she stood in the doorway of the bathroom, arms crossed, lips pursed into that familiar line of disappointment. My name is Eleanor, and I've spent the last 12 years of my life being told that my pain isn't real. Get up, she said that morning. You're going to be late for school again. Alexandra is already dressed and eating breakfast. I tried to stand, but my legs shook so badly I had to grip the toilet bowl. Mom, please, something's really wrong. I need to see a doctor. We've been to 4 doctors. They all say you're fine. She sighed, that heavy, theatrical sigh she'd perfected over the years. This attention seeking has to stop. That was the first day I learned that some kinds of pain go deeper than physical agony. Some kinds of pain live in the space between what you know is true and what everyone tells you isn't. Eleanor, you look terrible, Summer said to me last week, setting down a cup of tea on my desk. She's been my nurse turned friend for 3 years now, the only person who's consistently believed me. Have you been sleeping? I shook my head, trying to focus on my laptop screen. Working remotely as a content writer is the only job I can manage these days. The pain was bad last night. Really bad. Did you call your parents? I laughed, but it came out more like a cough. Yeah, right. Dad would just tell me to toughen up again, and Mom would remind me how Alexandra works 60-hour weeks without complaining. Summer sat on the edge of my desk. You need to see Dr. Elliot. He's different from the others. He actually listens. I had heard that before, from other well meaning friends who eventually gave up on me. But Summer was persistent. She made the appointment herself and drove me there when my hands were shaking too badly to grip the steering wheel. Dr. Elliot didn't look up from my file when I entered his office. He was actually reading, my stack of medical records. Tell me about the pain, he said, still not looking up. Shouldn't you tell me it's all in my head first? I tried to joke. That's usually how these appointments start. He finally met my eyes. I prefer to listen before I make assumptions. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about the burning that started in my joints when I was 17, how it spread like wildfire through my body over the years, how some days I couldn't get out of bed, and other days I could almost pretend to be normal. Almost. Your sister, he said, scanning a particular page. Has she shown any symptoms? Alexandra? I nearly laughed again. No, she's perfect. Always has been. Star student, star employee, star daughter. She doesn't have time for mysterious illnesses. Dr. Elliot nodded slowly, making notes. Then he ordered tests. Lots of tests. Tests no other doctor had bothered with because they were too busy suggesting antidepressants or therapy. 3 weeks later, I sat in his office again, clutching the results with trembling hands. It's a rare genetic condition, he explained, pointing to highlighted sections of the report. The symptoms match perfectly. We can start treatment now that we know what we're dealing with. I stared at the papers, at the long medical term that finally gave a name to my personal hell. Can I have copies? Of course. He paused, studying my face. Are you going to tell your family? I thought about my father's cold dismissals, my mother's accusations, Alexandra's eye rolls when she thought I couldn't see. 12 years of being called lazy, attention seeking, dramatic. 12 years of watching my sister bask in their pride while I drowned in their doubt. No, I said, carefully folding the papers and sliding them into my bag. Not yet. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by the validation I'd spent over a decade searching for. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Alexandra just got another promotion. When are you going to get your life together? I held the diagnosis papers up to the light, reading the words again and again until they blurred through my tears. But these weren't tears of sadness or relief. They were tears of something else entirely. Now, I whispered to the empty room, they'll never get to say they were right again. I didn't know then how prophetic those words would become. I didn't know that karma was already in motion, spinning its web of consequences that would trap us all. I just knew that for the first time in 12 years, I had proof. And sometimes proof is all you need to change everything. I was making coffee when Summer called, her voice tight with an emotion I couldn't place. Have you checked the news? She asked. I try not to. It's bad for my health. I joked, but the tension in her voice made me pause. What's wrong? Check your email. I just sent you a link. I pulled up my laptop, clicked the link, and felt my coffee cup slip from my fingers. It shattered on the kitchen floor, but I barely noticed. The headline read, Rising Tech Executive Collapses During Keynote Speech. Below it was a photo of Alexandra being loaded into an ambulance, her perfectly styled hair splayed across a stretcher. She was giving a presentation to over 200 people, Summer explained. Witnesses say she just dropped mid sentence. My phone stayed silent. No calls from mom, no texts from dad. Even as their golden child was rushed to the hospital, they couldn't bring themselves to reach out to their other daughter. Which hospital? I asked. Memorial. The same one where they refused to believe I was sick, I finished. Ironic. I didn't go right away. I waited 3 days, watching the local news coverage grow. Alexandra's company issued statements. Her boyfriend Damien gave interviews, looking appropriately concerned in his expensive suit. Still no word from my parents. When I finally walked into the hospital, I found them in the waiting room. Mom was pacing, her heels clicking against the linoleum. Dad sat perfectly still, staring at nothing. Eleanor? Mom stopped mid stride. What are you doing here? I saw the news, I said. Thought I should check if my sister was dead. Dad's head snapped up. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic? I smiled. Like collapsing in front of 200 people? Before either could respond, Dr. Elliot emerged from the double doors. My doctor, the one who had finally believed me. Mr. and Mrs. Santiago, he said, we have the test results. Mom grabbed his arm. Is she going to be okay? What's wrong with her? Dr. Elliot's eyes found mine across the room. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere private. They led us to a consultation room. Alexandra was there, propped up in a hospital bed, looking small and pale in her designer pajamas. Damien hovered nearby, his perfect hair slightly mussed. It's a rare genetic condition, Dr. Elliot began, and my heart stopped. The symptoms can be severe chronic pain, fatigue, organ dysfunction. No, Mom interrupted. That's impossible. Alexandra has always been healthy. Actually, Dr. Elliot continued, this variant is more aggressive than typical cases. Without intervention, the prognosis is. He paused, glancing at his papers. Weeks, maybe months. Alexandra made a sound like a wounded animal. Damien grabbed her hand. But there must be treatment, Dad said, his voice cracking for the first time in my memory. A cure? There's a procedure, Dr. Elliot explained, but it requires a very specific genetic match. We've checked the donor registry. I knew what he was going to say before he said it. Of course I did. The universe has a sick sense of humor that way. There's only one viable match, he finished, looking directly at me. Eleanor. The room went silent. 5 pairs of eyes turned to me, filled with different flavors of desperation. Eleanor, Mom whispered, reaching for my hand. I stepped back. Please, Alexandra spoke for the first time, her voice hoarse. I'm scared. I looked at her, really looked at her. Gone was the perfect makeup, the confident smirk, the air of superiority she'd worn like expensive perfume. For the first time in our lives, my sister looked breakable. Dr. Elliot, I said, keeping my voice steady, could I have a moment alone with my family? He nodded and left. Damien tried to stay, but Alexandra waved him out. I walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where I'd once sat in my car, crying after another doctor told me nothing was wrong. You know what's funny? I said, not turning around. I've been sick with this exact condition for 12 years. 12 years of begging you to believe me, to help me, to just see me. Eleanor, we didn't know, Dad started. No, I cut him off. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. I turned to face them. Mom was crying. Dad looked lost. Alexandra stared at her hands. Now you need something from me, I continued. Now I'm suddenly valuable. Now you believe in genetic conditions and chronic pain and all the things that made me a liar before. Please, Alexandra whispered again. I don't want to die. I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. I'll think about it. As I left, I heard Mom collapse into tears. But it was Alexandra's silence that followed me down the hallway. the same silence that had followed my own cries for help all those years ago. They let me stew for exactly 6 hours before the texts started coming. First from mom, then dad, then Damien, who somehow got my number. I ignored them all and went to work, letting the familiar rhythm of typing drown out their digital desperation. The knock on my apartment door came at sunset. I knew it was Damien before I opened it. He had that kind of cologne that announced itself first. Eleanor, he flashed his perfect teeth. Can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe. About what? Look, I know things haven't been great between you and your family. He ran a hand through his expertly tousled hair. But Alexandra needs you, and I'm prepared to make it worth your while. Worth my while? He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and showed me a banking app. Name your price. 6 figures, easy. Think about what you could do with that kind of money. I laughed. You think this is about money? Everything's about money, he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Just tell me what you want. What I want. I stepped closer. I wanted someone to believe me when I was throwing up blood in college. I wanted my father to visit me in the hospital when I had a pain crisis so bad they thought I was dying. I wanted my mother to stop telling everyone I was just looking for attention. His smile faltered. That was then. This is now. You're right. This is now. And now I'm asking you, what changed? When did you all start believing in this condition? When Alexandra. Exactly. I cut him off. When Alexandra got it. Because she matters. She's always mattered more. He shifted uncomfortably. That's not fair. No, it's not. None of this is fair. I started closing the door. Goodbye, Damien. Wait. He stuck his foot in the doorway. What do I tell her? Tell her I'm thinking about it. I slammed the door hard enough to make him yelp and pull his foot back. The next morning, my parents were waiting outside my building. Mom had brought coffee, my favorite kind, which she must have asked Summer about because she'd never bothered to learn it herself. Eleanor, please, she held out the cup like a peace offering. Just talk to us. Now you want to talk? I took the coffee but didn't drink it. 12 years of silence, and now you want to talk? Dad stepped forward. We made mistakes. We know that now. Do you? I turned to him. Do you remember what you said when I called you from the emergency room 3 years ago? His face went blank. You said, Stop being dramatic, Eleanor. Alexandra's getting an award tonight, and your mother needs to be there. Then you hung up. I took a sip of coffee. It was perfect, which somehow made it worse. I had a ruptured cyst. I could have died. We didn't know, Mom whispered. You didn't want to know. The words exploded out of me. Every time I tried to tell you something was wrong, you compared me to Alexandra. Every time I needed help, you told me to be more like Alexandra. Well, guess what? Now Alexandra is exactly like me, and suddenly this condition is real. She's dying, Dad said quietly. I was dying too, for years. But that didn't matter because it was just me, right? Mom reached for my hand. This time, I let her take it. Please, Eleanor, we're begging you. Help your sister. I looked at their faces, really looked at them. Mom's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide her exhaustion. Dad's usual stoic expression had cracked, showing something that might have been regret. Remember my graduation? I asked suddenly. They exchanged confused looks. I couldn't walk across the stage because I was in too much pain. Alexandra gave a speech as valedictorian, and you told everyone I was hungover, that I was just jealous of her success. I pulled my hand away from Mom's. That was the day I stopped expecting anything from either of you. Eleanor, I'll think about it, I said, cutting off whatever excuse was coming. But not for you, and not because you're finally acting like parents. I turned to go back inside, then stopped. Oh, and Mom, next time you try to bribe me with coffee, remember that I'm lactose intolerant. Another medical fact you chose to forget. I left them standing there, the untouched coffee growing cold between them. As I rode the elevator up to my apartment, my phone buzzed with a text from Alexandra. I'm sorry. I should have believed you. I stared at those words until they blurred. 12 years too late, but at least she was the first one to say it. I typed back a single word. Why? Her response came quickly, because now I know what it feels like to scream and have no one hear you. I turned off my phone without replying. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. My family was finally learning theirs. You know they're manipulating you, right? Summer said, watching me pack my overnight bag. This sudden kindness, the apologies, the daily gifts, it's all because they need something from you. I folded another sweater. I know. Then why are you going? Because I want them to remember this moment. I zipped up the bag when they finally treated me like a human being, only because they needed my body parts. The family meeting was set for 7. I arrived at 7:15, just late enough to make a point. They'd gathered in Alexandra's hospital room, mom, dad, Damien, and my sister in her designer hospital gown. Eleanor! Mom jumped up. We were worried you wouldn't come. That's new, I said, setting down my bag. Usually you worry I will come. Alexandra winced. She looked worse than before, her skin taking on a yellowish tinge I recognized too well from my own mirror. We've been talking, Dad said, unusually gentle, about how to make this right. I sat in the visitor's chair, crossing my legs. Have you? We'll pay for any treatment you need, Mom rushed in. The best doctors, specialists, whatever it takes. Private nurses, Damien added. Home care. A new apartment? Dad said. Somewhere closer to us. I looked at each of their eager faces. And what about therapy? Of course, Mom nodded. Whatever kind you want. No, I leaned forward. Therapy for you. All of you. To understand why you spent 12 years watching your daughter suffer and decided she was lying. The room went quiet. That's reasonable, Alexandra said softly. We should do that. And public acknowledgement, I continued. Social media posts, family emails, whatever it takes to correct every time you told people I was crazy or attention seeking. Mom's face tightened, but Dad nodded. Done. And one more thing. I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app. I want you to listen to something I wrote. Really listen. I started reading. Age 17, first symptoms. Mom says I'm being dramatic. Age 18, collapsed in shower. Dad says I'm hungover. Age 19, hospitalized for 3 days. No visitors because Alexandra has a big presentation. Age 20, I read for 10 minutes. Every dismissal, every cruel word, every missed cry for help. By the end, Mom was crying. Dad stared at the floor. Alexandra had turned away, but I could see her shoulders shaking. That's not even half of it, I said, putting my phone away. But it's enough to make my point. We'll do everything you asked, Dad said. Just please help your sister. I stood up. I'll think about it. Think about it? Damien burst out. She's dying! I was dying too, I said calmly. For years. Funny how that only matters when it's Alexandra. I left them there, but instead of going home, I went to the hospital library. I spent hours researching what would happen if I refused, survival rates, alternative treatments, legal implications. The results were clear. Without my donation, Alexandra had weeks, maybe a month. There were no other matches in the registry, no experimental treatments available in time. My phone buzzed with a text from Summer. You okay? I wrote back. Did you know they can't legally force me to donate? They can't even take my organs if I die unless I've agreed to it. Her response came quickly. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about power, I replied, and how they finally see me now that I have it. The next morning, Mom cornered me in the hospital cafeteria. We're planning a family dinner, she said, trying to sound casual, to celebrate once you and Alexandra are both recovered from the procedure. I stirred my coffee slowly. Am I invited this time? Unlike Alexandra's engagement dinner? She flinched. Eleanor, please, we're trying. No, you're desperate. There's a difference. She's your sister. Was I her sister when she told her friends I was faking it for attention? I looked up from my coffee. When she laughed about my mysterious illness at family gatherings? Mom gripped the edge of the table. People change. She's changed. No. I stood up. She's just scared. Like I was. Except when I was scared, no one came running to save me. What are you saying? I'm saying I'll be at your dinner. I grabbed my purse. And I'll have an announcement to make. About the donation? I smiled, the same smile Alexandra used to give me when she knew something I didn't. About everything. As I walked away, I heard Mom call after me. We're having it tomorrow night. Don't be late. I didn't turn around. Let them plan their celebration. Let them think they'd won. Tomorrow night, they'd learn what it really means when karma comes full circle. Mom outdid herself for the dinner: crystal glasses, the good china, even fresh flowers, all the things she used to save for Alexandra's achievements. Alexandra herself sat at the table in a wheelchair, wrapped in a cashmere blanket, trying to look stronger than she was. A toast! Dad stood, raising his glass. To family, to healing, and to new beginnings. Everyone lifted their glasses. I took a small sip of wine, letting it linger on my tongue. Eleanor, Mom smiled, that bright, hopeful smile she'd been practicing all week. We have something for you. She pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. Inside was a check with more zeros than I'd ever seen, and keys to what she explained was a luxury apartment near their house. For after the surgery, she said, so we can take care of both our girls properly. Damien cleared his throat. And I've arranged for the best post operative care money can buy. For both of you. I set down my wine glass carefully. That's very generous. We want to make things right, Dad said. A fresh start. Alexandra reached across the table with a shaking hand. I know it doesn't make up for everything, but we're trying, Elle. Really trying. I looked at their expectant faces, all glowing with relief and premature victory. They thought they'd won. They thought money and promises could erase 12 years of cruelty. I have an announcement, too, I said. Mom beamed. Of course, sweetheart. Tell us. I took another sip of wine, savoring the moment. I'm not doing it. The silence that followed was absolute. What? Alexandra whispered. I'm not doing the donation. I set down my glass. I won't be your donor. Mom's face went white. This isn't funny, Eleanor. No, I agreed. It's not funny at all. Kind of like how it wasn't funny when you told the whole family I was faking seizures for attention. But But we agreed, Dad stammered. The apartment, the care, everything you asked for. You can't buy redemption, I said, and you can't buy my body parts. Damien stood up so fast his chair fell backward. You can't do this! She'll die! Like I almost died? I kept my voice calm. 3 years ago, when I had organ failure and none of you answered your phones? That was different, Mom pleaded. We didn't know then. No, you didn't want to know. And now? I reached into my purse and pulled out a document. Now it's too late. Alexandra grabbed the paper with trembling hands. What is this? Legal documentation showing I removed myself from the donor registry over a year ago. I also filed paperwork specifically prohibiting donation of any organs or tissue to family members. I smiled. It's ironclad. My lawyer made sure of it. The room erupted. Mom screamed. Dad knocked over his wine glass. Damien started yelling about lawyers and lawsuits. But Alexandra just stared at me, tears rolling down her face. Why? Because 12 years ago, I needed my big sister, I needed my family, and you all decided I wasn't worth believing. I stood up slowly. Actions have consequences. Sometimes they take years to arrive, but they always come. You're killing her, Mom sobbed. Your own sister. No, I picked up my purse. Your disbelief, your cruelty, your years of dismissal, that's what's killing her. I'm just not offering a last minute salvation. Please, Alexandra whispered. I'm scared. The same words from the hospital. But this time, they didn't touch me. I was scared too, I said. For 12 years. Funny how no one cared then. Dad grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. You can't do this. We're your family. I pulled away. Family believes each other. Family shows up. Family doesn't gaslight and abuse and then expect forgiveness when they suddenly need something. You're a monster, Damien spat. I paused at the door. No, I'm just the first person in this family to say no to Alexandra. Maybe if someone had done that sooner, she wouldn't have grown up thinking she could treat people like garbage without consequences. As I walked out, I heard Mom's wails, Dad's angry shouts, and Alexandra's quiet sobs. But over all of that, I heard something else: the sound of karma finally catching up. In my car, I took a deep breath and texted Summer, "It's done." Her reply came instantly. "Are you okay?" I looked back at the house, at the chaos I'd left behind, at the family that only valued me when they needed parts of my body. "No," I typed back, "but for the first time in 12 years, I'm free." I drove away from their perfect house, their perfect dinner, their imperfect daughter who finally learned what it meant to be powerless. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do to others, it's what you refuse to do for them. The story broke on a Tuesday. Tech executive denied life saving donation by sister screamed the headlines. My phone exploded with notifications, messages, and death threats from strangers who thought they knew the whole story. "Turn off your social media," Summer advised, closing my laptop. "They're crucifying you out there." I was reading comments calling me a murderer when Damien's interview aired. He'd gone on national television, perfectly groomed in his grief, to tell the world about the heartless sister who refused to save her dying sibling. "She's always been jealous of Alexandra," he said, wiping away camera ready tears. "This is her revenge." The next day, Mom's tearful interview followed. "We're just trying to understand why she wants to punish us like this." I watched it all from my apartment, where I'd been holed up since the story broke. Summer brought groceries and checked my mail, which now included handwritten hate letters. "You should tell your side," she said, sorting through the latest batch of threats. "Fight back!" I shook my head, but then my phone buzzed with a text from Alexandra. "They're making you into a monster. Let me fix it." That was the final straw. I opened my laptop and started typing. The blog post began simply: "I was 17 when I first realized something was wrong with my body. I was 29 when my family finally believed me, but only because my sister got sick too." I wrote everything: the years of pain, the dismissal, the isolation, the way they'd laugh when I couldn't get out of bed, the family events I missed because I was in the hospital alone, the time Mom told her bridge club I was in rehab when really I was getting treatment for organ inflammation. "My sister is dying," I wrote near the end, "and I'm supposed to save her because now, suddenly, this condition is real. Now, suddenly, chronic pain matters. Now, suddenly, my body has value, but only the parts they can cut out and give to her." I hit publish at 3 a.m., then turned off my phone. The post went viral by morning. Other chronically ill people started sharing their stories. Women wrote about medical gaslighting, about families who didn't believe them, about the particular pain of being dismissed by those who should protect you. "I believe Eleanor" started trending. "Look at this." Summer showed me her phone. "You've started a movement." The media narrative began to shift. Medical experts discussed the history of women being disbelieved by doctors. Psychologists talked about family trauma and medical abuse. My story wasn't just mine anymore, it had become a catalyst. Then Alexandra posted her response. "My sister told the truth. She wrote on her company's website, 'I was cruel. We all were. We watched her suffer for years and chose not to believe her. I'm dying now, and I understand her pain in a way I never did before. But it's too late for understanding. Some debts can't be paid with apologies.'" The comments exploded. "Finally, someone taking responsibility." Too little, too late. Karma is real. Damien showed up at my door that evening, no camera crew this time. "Take it down," he demanded. "Your blog post. Take it down, or I'll sue you for defamation." I leaned against the doorframe. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Everything I wrote is documented. Want to see my medical records? The hospital bills? The text messages? "You're killing her." "No," I said quietly. "I'm just not saving her. There's a difference." He raised his hand like he might hit me, then thought better of it. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is." I started closing the door. "And Damien? The security cameras in this hallway work great. Maybe think about that before you come threatening me again." After he left, I got another text from Alexandra. "I meant what I wrote. I'm sorry. Not because I'm dying, but because I finally understand what living feels like for you." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Understanding only matters when it changes how you treat people. You had 12 years to understand. You chose not to." She wrote back immediately, "I know, And now I have to live or die with that choice. That night, I sat with Summer on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker like stars. What happens now? She asked. Now? I sipped my tea. Now they learn what it feels like to be powerless, to know something's wrong and not be able to fix it, to scream for help and have nobody listen. And Alexandra? I thought about my sister, lying in her hospital bed, finally understanding what it meant to be the one nobody could save. Alexandra gets what she always wanted, I said, to be just like me. The city hummed below us, indifferent to our small dramas of life and death. Somewhere in a hospital room, my sister was learning the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the consequences of our actions take years to arrive, but when they do, they come with interest. Alexandra died on a Thursday morning. I found out from a news alert on my phone while waiting for coffee at my favorite cafe. The barista saw my hands shaking and asked if I was okay. My sister just died, I said, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. She gave me my coffee for free. It was the kindest thing anyone did for me that day. The media circus started immediately. Reporters camped outside my apartment, shouting questions. How do you feel about your sister's death? Do you regret your decision? What do you say to people calling you a murderer? Summer helped me pack a bag that night. Iceland, she said, holding up my passport. Like we always talked about, you need to get away. 24 hours later, I stood on a black sand beach, watching waves crash against volcanic rock. The wind whipped my hair, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. We're having a private funeral. Please don't come. I typed back, wasn't planning to. 3 days into my trip, while hiking a remote trail, my phone rang with an unknown number. Is this Eleanor? A woman's voice asked. This is Margaret Wells, Alexandra's lawyer. I sat down on a boulder, watching steam rise from a nearby hot spring. What do you want? Alexandra left something for you, a letter and other items. She was quite insistent about you receiving them after her passing. I don't want anything from her. She said you'd say that. The lawyer paused. She also said to tell you it's not what you think. It's not an apology or a guilt trip. It's the truth you deserve. I gave her my email address. The scanned letter arrived an hour later. Dear Eleanor, it began, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Good. That means I can finally tell you everything without fear of consequences. Because the truth is, I knew I was sick months before I collapsed. I had the same symptoms you described for years, the pain, the fatigue, everything. But I watched how they treated you, and I was terrified. Terrified of becoming the other daughter, the broken one, the one they didn't believe. So I hid it. I pushed through. I kept working and smiling and pretending until my body literally gave out in front of 200 people. I couldn't hide anymore after that, but by then it was too late. The disease had progressed too far. The doctors said even if you had agreed to donate, my chances were slim. I never told our parents that part. You were right about everything, about them, about me, about how we treated you. I was their perfect daughter because I learned early to hide anything that might make me less than perfect. You were braver than me. You asked for help. You told the truth, and we punished you for it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know that your strength, the strength we mocked, was something I envied but never had. You survived 12 years of what killed me in months. There's more. In my private safe, you'll find documentation. Years of medical records showing early symptoms I hid, diary entries, everything you need to prove to our parents that their perfect daughter was just better at lying than you ever were. Do what you want with it. Burn it, publish it, use it to finally make them understand what they did to you. Or don't. Your choice. For once in our lives, I'm giving you the power to decide what truth they get to know. You didn't kill me, Eleanor. Our family's culture of perfection and denial did, and maybe in the end I killed myself by choosing their approval over my own survival. Be free, sister. You've earned it. Alexandra. I sat on that boulder until the sun set, reading the letter over and over. Summer called twice, but I let it go to voicemail. Finally, as darkness fell over the Icelandic landscape, I typed out an email to Alexandra's lawyer. Send me everything. Then I turned off my phone and started walking. The northern lights were beginning to dance across the sky, green and purple ribbons of light that made me feel small and insignificant. I thought about Alexandra hiding her pain behind perfect smiles, about mom and dad creating a world where their daughters had to choose between honesty and love, about the weight of secrets and the price of truth. Some debts are paid in silence, I whispered to the Arctic wind, others in blood. Yours was paid in both. The lights continued their dance, indifferent to my family's tragedy. Somewhere in a lawyer's office, a safe held the final act of our story. But for now, I just watched the sky and let myself feel something I hadn't expected: peace. The package from Alexandra's lawyer arrived while I was still in Iceland. Summer forwarded me a photo of the sealed envelope, but I asked her to wait until I returned to open it. "Are you sure you want to see what's inside?" she asked when I finally sat at my kitchen table, staring at the thick manila envelope. "No," I said, breaking the seal. But Alexandra made her choice. Now I need to make mine. The contents spilled across my table: medical records, journal entries, hospital receipts paid in cash, years of hidden doctor visits and secret symptoms, all carefully documented by my perfect sister who'd chosen silence over truth. She really was sick, Summer whispered, reading over my shoulder. All that time. And she watched them destroy me for having the same condition. I gathered the papers into a neat pile. She watched and said nothing. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Please come home. We need to talk." I looked at Alexandra's papers, then at Summer. "Want to take a drive?" They were waiting in their perfect living room when I arrived. Mom had lost weight. Dad looked older. Neither spoke as I sat down and placed Alexandra's records on the coffee table. "What's that?" Mom asked. "The truth," I said, opening the first file. Alexandra's truth. I read them: entries from her journal, descriptions of pain that mirrored my own, secret doctor visits dating back 3 years, prescriptions filled under false names. She was sick, I continued, watching their faces crumple. Long before her collapse, she just knew better than to tell you. "Why?" Dad's voice cracked. "Why wouldn't she tell us?" "Because she saw what you did to me." I pulled out more papers. She wrote about it. How watching you dismiss my pain taught her to hide her own. How being the perfect daughter meant never showing weakness. Mom started crying. Dad just stared at the floor. "You didn't just fail me," I said quietly. "You failed both your daughters. The only difference is I survived it. What do you want from us?" Mom whispered. "Want?" I laughed. "I don't want anything from you. Alexandra left me these papers to use however I chose. I could publish them, expose your perfect family for what it really was. I could destroy what's left of your reputation." They both flinched, but I'm not going to do that. I stood up. "Because Alexandra made her choice and she died with it. That's punishment enough." "Then why show us?" Dad asked. "Because you need to live with the knowledge that you didn't just torture one daughter, you terrified the other into silence, into choosing death over disappointing you." I walked to the door. "That's your karma to carry." "Eleanor, wait," Mom called out. "Please, can we try to fix this?" I turned back one last time. Some things can't be fixed, some debts can't be paid. Live with that. I have. The next morning, Dr. Elliot called. "I heard you're back in town. There's something I'd like to discuss with you." We met in his office, where a camera crew was setting up equipment. "We're making a documentary," he explained, "about chronic illness, medical gaslighting, and family trauma. Would you be interested in telling your story?" I thought about Alexandra's papers, about all the other people suffering in silence. "Yes," I said, "but not just my story, my sister's too, the whole truth." He nodded. "That's exactly what we need." That evening, I sat in my new apartment, not the one they'd tried to bribe me with, but one I'd chosen for myself, and started painting. It was something I'd always wanted to try, but never had the energy for before my treatment. The sunrise I was creating on canvas wasn't perfect. The colors bled into each other, the lines weren't straight, but it was honest, real, like the pain that still lived in my body. like the truth that finally lived in my words. Summer brought dinner and watched me paint. How does it feel? She asked. Being the last one standing? I dipped my brush in yellow paint. It feels like freedom, not the happy kind, the heavy kind, the kind that comes with knowing you survived something that killed someone else. And your parents? They'll live with their choices, just like Alexandra died with hers, just like I'm living with mine. I added another streak of yellow to my sunrise. It wasn't quite right, but it was mine, my truth, my pain, my healing. Sometimes that's all we get. Not perfect justice or complete closure, just the quiet victory of surviving and the courage to paint our own tomorrow. Some stories don't end with forgiveness, I said, stepping back from my canvas. Some end with truth, and sometimes that's enough.